Where to?
I guess Duke.
Duke it is. Duke in Virginia. You're on with Jenna and Matt.
Afternoon. How's everybody today?
Great. How are you?
Fat, dumb, and happy.
What'd you say? Unhappy?
Fat, dumb, and happy. It's.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of me. I'm also old, so that gives me an extra bonus.
There you go.
All right. So I guess you saw the question.
I'm looking at it now.
Correct?
I posted a video this past week or week before about whether or not there's evidence for God, and I gave an example about me killing a fictional person named Steve and what counts as evidence and what doesn't, and you wanted to address that?
Well, in some respect, but I'd kind of like to take a different approach. As you notice,
Sure.
My question is, in your scenario, Matt kills Steve, and then you point out if Matt exists, then that is evidence that it happened. So what I really want to get to is, without the evidence, what other evidence do you have? Let's say that Steve was killed, but Matt doesn't exist. There has to be some other explanation for how Steve got killed, correct?
Yep.
Okay? So this is my only objection to the atheist debates, and I got to say you're among my favorite of the celebrity atheists out there, commenting on your videos frequently. And it was almost as if you were reading my comments, because I'd always wanted to call the show and say, you are aware that there is evidence for a God. You don't have to accept it, but it does exist. But you've acknowledged that.
No. In the context of there's anecdotal evidence and stuff, yes. But the whole point of that video was, once upon a time, I would, like a lot of other atheists, glibly say, oh, there's no evidence for God. And then the pedantic people would come along and say, well, there's testimonial and anecdotal evidence, and that's actually evidence. And I would say, yes,
right.
but it's not
to accept that evidence.
But it's not good enough evidence. It's not sufficient evidence. But the truth is, the whole point of that video was to say that I may have in fact been wrong, and it may in fact be fair to say there is no evidence for the proposition God exists, because the type of...
It may be fair to say that. However, what I'm seeking here is an alternative.
An alternative to what?
Well, to the question is, let's take, say, the Oxford Dictionary of God, the monotheistic Christian God. He's defined as the creator. He's defined as the source of all moral authority, a creator of the universe, by the way, which I would guess incorporates everything in the universe, and is considered the supreme being. So let's start with creator. It's fine to say that you don't believe there's a creator God, or there's not sufficient evidence, but my argument is much the same. I don't find sufficient evidence to an alternative.
It's tough.
So if God
Okay.
did not create the universe,
Duke,
how did it come to exist?
We don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know. But so do you have
And if the right answer...
Any alternative? I mean, really, do you have any evidence that supports an alternative?
Well, we have Big Bang cosmology that explains the process as best we can understand, but that's not the same question. The issue here...
There are four different...
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
of how that happens, so
Duke,
none of them are confirmed.
Duke, it doesn't matter. There's no... Okay, let's say somebody's murdered, and we don't know who did it, but somebody suspects that the butler did it.
Mm-hmm.
Are we reasonable in concluding that the butler did it?
Not without investigating.
Okay, so now we have
If you investigate it, you find that it doesn't look like the butler did it, then do you stop there, or
no,
you go find an alternative explanation?
You keep exploring to the best of your ability, but you do realize that some murders go unsolved forever, right? Because there's just an inability for us to invent. Now, okay, so now we have a universe.
The question of God will go on unsolved forever unless God reveals himself, too.
Cool, so...
Right, that's what we're waiting for.
So I take it then...
Well,
I take it,
Duke,
Duke, I take it then, with that statement from you, that you also don't believe in God, correct?
No, not at all. All I'm suggesting is...
No, not at all.
If you disagree with the prospect that there is a creator God, what evidence do you have for an alternate explanation?
I don't need any evidence for an alternative. Saying I don't believe something does not put a burden on me to come up with alternate explanations.
No, it doesn't, but it makes no sense, and this is the point.
It makes all the sense. You've already agreed that it makes sense.
At least anecdotal evidence or minimal evidence over somebody who has no evidence.
Duke, your position is essential. Duke, your position is nobody can know whether or not the butler did it until the butler reveals himself. But I'm going to believe the butler did it anyway. That's your position.
Yeah, but we're talking about different things. We're talking about the demise of Steve. But that's not really what the question about God is. It's not.
We have a universe.
It's the origin. So
we have a universe.
Steve analysis. Let's say Steve exists, but Steve's parents don't exist. How did Steve come to exist?
Okay, I don't need. No, Duke, stop.
Because there is some evidence.
Duke,
there is
stop.
There's a sufficient belief.
I don't need a bullshit hypothetical about a person existing without parents. That doesn't do any of us any good for you to even suggest something.
The analogy doesn't really work either.
The Steve analogy does work, and you've already actually acknowledged that without supporting evidence, it's unwise and unwarranted to reach a conclusion.
And it's unwise to just walk away and assume and just say, well, the butler didn't do it. So
Duke,
who walked away?
Did you listen to the last call?
Who did it?
Duke. Did you listen to the last call?
Portion of it, I was actually watching TV waiting for you to come on.
Well, if you had been paying attention, you would have heard us point out how absolutely bullshit it is to suggest that we have just walked away and ignored this. We are the ones here on a show, some of us for many, many years, continually asking, what is the evidence that the butler did it, and getting nothing but fallacies. We're not the ones walking away from this. The people who are in intellectual jeopardy here are not those of us who are saying present the evidence. It's the people who are saying we believe the butler did it, but we can't present any evidence for it. Those are the people who are being unreasonable.
And not only that, but you have to believe the butler did it too.
No, I don't necessarily have to believe the butler did it, because that's just a proposition. The butler did it.
God created is also just a proposition.
Something else did it. If Steve is killed and the butler doesn't exist, or the butler didn't do it, there has to be an alternate explanation.
How do you know Steve didn't have a heart attack?
What I'm trying to get from atheists is some alternate explanation.
Tough.
What alternate explanation is there?
I don't know how many times.
I don't have sufficient evidence to support an alternate explanation.
You don't have sufficient evidence to support your preferred explanation. So you have a preferred explanation without sufficient evidence.
So how is your?
Shut up. You have your preferred explanation without sufficient evidence, and you're looking at everybody else going, do you have any other alternatives? Whether or not people present other alternatives is irrelevant to what the truth is and what one is warranted to believe. So do you have evidence for your Oh my God, you talked all the way through that. Goodbye. I'm not letting you do that to Jenna on her first day.
Thank you.
You don't get to just sit there and talk through, listen to the TV through the other call that already answered your questions and then talk through while I'm trying to explain. Hooray.
So,
by the way, as a reminder, before we go on to the next call, this show is sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You're welcome to come down if you are an atheist or atheist-friendly person. Visit the building not only while the shows are gone, but 11 to 9, 7 days a week, and there'll be dinner here after the show. If you're around, come on down.
Yay.
Yay. I just occasionally have to throw out old-style announcements. It's nostalgic.
It's helpful.
It was funny because looking back on the show, like 15 or so years ago when I started, and Ashley Perrion was the host. Hi. You come down and hang out anytime you want, Ashley. But there was almost a script for the intro. And so they all sounded exactly the same. And for whatever reason, I just memorized it and went with it. I thought this is the intro you have to use. And so my brain was like, hey, welcome to the Atheist Experience. It's sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational blah, blah, blah. And then I realized someday, I don't have to say that word for word every time. Being a freethinker allows me to float around and throw it in late in the show or whatever. But where are we going now?